Hello and welcome back to the Thefanpubcast, all about NFL American football, and I'm joined by Al. Al, come and say hi.
Hi Sean, how are you?
I'm really well. I'm looking forward to seeing what Al's lined up for us today. This is our third pubcast. It's our third pubcast, and we're really looking forward to seeing. It's been a quiet week, but we're really looking forward to starting getting some details out there. And we're going to keep it to a structured hour as well. Al.
We intend to.
We're going to try.
We've never managed it yet, but you know,
there's always a first.
This would be an achievement. Right. That's a minute wasted.
Let's get on with it then. Al.
Okay, let's go on with the news. It is a bit thin on the ground, so don't expect many spectacular bits of news. Probably the biggest bit for this week is Eric Decker signing a 1-year deal with the Titans.
Yeah, fantastic bit of news, A's. It's a good bit of news, isn't it, to talk about? We can certainly fluff away 10 minutes on this, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious he'll probably go into the slot there. That's where he's played most of his career.
Yeah.
Another red zone target for Mariota.
Yeah.
And that offence is looking pretty...
Well, if you look at all the pieces, I mean, so you've got DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry in the backfield. So
that's a really good 1-2.
Solid 1-2. If one went down, you'd be comfortable with the other. You've now got three legitimate targets who you could easily say are comfortable wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3. I like all of them. They complement each other really well. I just think it's a wonderful.
And it's a really strong O-line as well. So
it's just everything about it. It's just going to be very exciting to watch. And I think this is a perfect move for Decker. I mean, it really is a wonderful move for Decker. And I only see good things for all of them. I think the only person that suffers in this, there's always some casualty fantasy-wise, is probably Delaney Walker, but only a little bit. But I mean, tight ends, we talked about this last week. I'm not worried. Let's put it that way. I don't, if he drops off 5 to 10 fantasy points, does that really matter in the grand scheme?
Yeah, you think Decker's going to take some red zone targets, and that's probably him that's going to be affected most.
I think so, because Decker's brilliant at the underneath stuff, which is normally the realm of the tight end, really. Whereas Decker's wonderful at rolling out into that space, particularly near the goal line. And I think this will suit everybody. This will be just brilliant for all of them. That includes Rashid Matthews, Corey Davis. Less pressure on anybody. I mean, nobody. You can't just cover one. You have to think about the team. So brilliant for them. And Mariota should have a field day.
Chris, who's one of our community, Chris Jennings, he actually flagged up the Titans as a 50-1 outsider.
Fabulous bet.
I'm now looking at offence. I've actually been tempted to go in and put a small bet at 50s.
I think a small bet on the Titans because the odds are just too good.
Well, 50-1, and a lot of it's only in a few places now. So if you do want to bet it, then get on there because it's 25-1 in places, half that. So.
I recommend getting on that now, and I certainly won't forget to do that after.
Yeah, only a small bet. A small bet, but you know they could well give you a good run for your money.
Well, it's a nice little £5 bet, isn't it, for somebody? It doesn't do any harm. So yeah, that's excellent. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Decker anyway. We all know how good he is. Injury last year cost him, and that was unfortunate. And a 1-year deal is very good because for both sides, it's a good bit of business because you're getting Decker with still some years left on those tyres. And if he does a good job, then they're obviously going to re-sign him for another couple of years.
And if he's injured and he goes down, then
you haven't lost much. And so for everybody, it's a great bit of business. And I just think it's brilliant for everybody. I think there's less pressure on Davis coming in, who's going to be really brilliant. Rashid Matthews should continue doing what he does. He's like this workhorse kind of player who always seems to produce. I'm very excited for him, and I mean I was excited before this move. Now I'm even, it's a salivating move. You think, God, this is going to be so good to watch, and you want a piece of all of this, don't you? Fantasy wise, every single player in that offense looks interesting. None of them can be. You should not avoid any of those. They're all great to have, all of them, including Delaney Walker. His value will probably drop a little, which is great value.
But then his ADP will probably reflect that. So.
It will, so it'd be really good.
Okay, moving on. Lacon Treadwell is a clear number 3 in camp.
Yeah.
This is over Jarius Wright, and it's not really surprising that he could come on this season, but he'd probably need an injury to sort of come good.
Yeah, we don't know too much about him yet, do we? We know that he came in as a high-profile player last year. We haven't seen a lot for a number of reasons of him. He is interesting. His ADP, as you always say, reflects it, and therefore there's very little risk in picking him up in any size draft. And
for a late round flyer.
Yeah, for a late round flyer, there's no harm in it. I mean, he is the number 3 there, and they are talking him. I mean, you've got to be careful. Beat writers will do this all the time, but I am interested to see what happens as we see the first pre-season games, and by then we will have had to have made some draft. So kind of, it's kind of an unknown quantity still, but I am excited to see what he can do. He didn't come into the league as a high-flying player for no reason, so there's definitely something to this.
Yeah, and they did the same with Diggs. He didn't play till the second year, week 4, and then he exploded onto the scene, and he is like probably their number one wide receiver.
I don't know if you caught the news about Teddy Bridgewater today as well.
Well, that's an extra bit of news, actually.
Excellent.
He's possible to return in 2017, which is great news, isn't it?
Very exciting for him, and I'm very pleased, actually, because we were worried that we wouldn't see anything of him in 2017.
And we don't know if we will yet, so you have to temper that. But.
I am still very concerned. Obviously, we've got the inside information we had on it last year from our doctor friend. He's been proved right every time, hasn't he, so far?
Yeah.
His knowledge of these injuries has been brilliant, and he has tempered this upbeat news with a little bit of reality, which is just be careful that he's still going to take time to come back in. It could be easy 6 to 9 months still from this point.
Yeah, especially taking contact.
You have to. They'll obviously ease him in, but the good news is at least he's out there.
At least there's a chance. At least
and I'm pleased for him because he was looking really good.
I'm staying with the Vikings. They've been in the news this week. Michael Floyd, who's the other guy that Laquan Treadwell's ahead of. House arrest. He's been found to have alcohol in his system.
There's a reason why he was on a decline, and we're learning more and more as every day goes by. And I now think we may well have seen the end of it.
Because when Arizona cut him, you're like, oh wow, what's going on there? There's something obviously behind the scenes. And then the Pats picked him up.
Now we know
they dropped him. And
now we know. I mean, when the Pats drop you, there's normally a reason for it. It's either money because they're quite brutal, or you're just not good enough. And I'm afraid he just wasn't.
Well, you're not the kind of person they want on their team.
No.
And they will be brutal with that.
And they won't mess about, will they?
I mean, even if you miss a practice, they can cut you there. Never mind some of those shenanigans.
We've seen what they can do when you've had a 200-yard game and then you go in the doghouse the week later. So
we reported last week in the podcast that Roethlisberger and Martavis hadn't really had a conversation. Ben's come out this week saying Martavis looks like a stud again.
Yeah.
And that's going to be great news for his stock and value. That's sending all the right messages.
Let's be honest. I mean, let's just put this out there so it's absolutely crystal clear. Up until just about now, I think me and you both agreed on how high we value Martavis Bryant in redraft. Now, we temper that in Dynasty, and we'll explain why in a moment.
Because of the risks.
There's the big risk. And we'll probably talk about risk players, won't we, in a future video very soon, actually, about risk players. He's probably going to be on that list. But I just want to touch on this about him, which is this. I think where his ADP was settling at that point, before this news and before we get closer and closer to camps, was fantastic value. But as we get nearer the season in redraft, I won't be at all surprised to see this guy in that 4th round, 5th round in small leagues, 4th round in large leagues kind of territory.
I can see him going higher.
And maybe higher, yes, absolutely agree with you. And I think at that point, in redraft, I don't think there's a risk in this. I think he's a legitimate wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2, with tremendous upside. And he's probably He's probably got the highest glass ceiling of anybody outside the top tier.
He's currently 67.
And I
expect that to rise.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I can't see
because the talent's there.
Yeah, and as the season progresses, but as the pre-season begins, I just see it climbing. I mean, we all know the talent's there. We've seen how often does he turn a performance into 100 yards or close to it and a touchdown. It's pretty freakish, his abilities.
He's got freakish skills.
Opposite Antonio Brown in that offense with Le'Veon Bell. I mean, sky's the limit, really, and it will be exciting to see what he does. But be wary.
Imagine the corners trying to cover both of them too, and then let Bell out of the back.
Just be wary in Dynasty. If you get a year out of him now, I will honestly say this time and time again: sell high. While the going is good, sell high. As much as I'll
be buying. If you can make a season,
as much as it hurts people, sell high and capitalise on the good gains, because the off season always concerns me with players like him. Always does.
You'd be worrying every day, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Jared Goff, who always seems to turn up.
Well, he always comes up in this podcast, doesn't he?
You being a big Rams fan,
wearing the hat.
You are
hoping for the best.
He's come out that he's learned the offense much quicker this year.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that excite you as a Rams fan?
Well, what they're really saying, if you read between the lines, is that obviously last year they couldn't give him the full reins of the offense. Obviously, they've got a new coach, and there are other pieces that have been put in place. So he's obviously much further along from a coaching perspective of picking things up than he was a year ago. And that's how the NFL does it, not how they do it at college level. So this is good. It shows the guy has got a football brain, an intelligent football brain, and it's now how he transcends that into the football field. There is a chance, people are right, there is always a chance with the quarterback, give him a couple of years and watch him progress.
And don't have Jeff Fisher as your head coach.
Yeah, it's going to be better for them. And, there is some optimistic signs, but I am tempering this with reality. I think we've got to just remember what we did last year at home.
To be fair, you could probably draft him any time you like. He's not going any time off the board any time.
He's very cheap. Fantasy-wise, it's very, very cheap. And I think really, if we were being honest, that he'd be a second quarterback at best, really.
Where would you sort of rank him? What sort of ranking would you have him in?
Currently, at this moment, if I'm looking at the 32 quarterbacks, I'm putting him up about 27, 28 out of 32.
That's quite high.
That's
quite high for him.
That's where I'm putting.
Who are you putting below him?
Well, there's a lot of players out there with journeyman quarterbacks that can go below him because you don't know what they're going to do. But I think we know what we're going to get with Jared Goff. It's just whether there's more progression from him this year. If you want to see
it's certainly possible, isn't
if he can put 500 to 800 yards on his yardage totals on last year, cut down the interceptions maybe by about a third, those are very, very positive signs moving forward.
Will they have actually looked at his skills and tried to design an offense?
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's what you should do. This is what I keep saying, and people keep. I had really interesting debates over this very subject in regards to certain players, because this is what I was saying about Christian McCaffrey last week. Got a couple of people contact me and say, "Are you really that low on him?" I said, "Well, I'm saying yes, because the offense fit isn't quite right, and they'll have to do a lot of different changes they're not used to make it work." Can they do that? It's more difficult than you think.
So, I mean, also they've been a bit hamstrung by the NFL rule about him not being able to practice because of his school exams, I think.
Yeah.
There's some rule, isn't there? So he's probably a little bit behind.
Yeah, he seems an intelligent guy.
And depending on the player. And
he seems an intelligent bloke, and I have every doubt that he's probably got the playbook. He's at least allowed to take that and look at it and study it and all the rest of it. I'm pretty confident he'll pick it up. But it's not just about that. It's the timing. Everything is about... In the NFL, it's always about timing, and you don't have... We know how quick the game is now, quick a quarterback has to throw the ball to be effective. You've seen what Rodgers does, Brady does, all the top ones do, is they get the ball in their hands and out of their hands rapidly. And if you don't do that because you're looking for adjustments on the field, you're going to take a lot more sacks. I mean, I was shocked last year looking at some of the stats when you look at how hit, say, for example, Andrew Luck and Cam Newton were last year sack-wise. Those are far too high totals for calibre quarterbacks to be taking that kind of sack.
Both their lines were horrible.
Were horrendous. I mean, both of them took 41 sacks each last year. It was far too many. I mean, I don't want at least no more than 25 on each of those guys. So both those lines.
I mean, these are your high quality franchise quarterbacks. You've got to protect them. And the Colts
Luck had a bad shoulder. I mean, he was throwing the ball the way he threw it last year and took 41 sacks on top of an injured shoulder. I mean, seriously, you're near enough killing your franchise quarterback.
I know, it's madness.
That's crazy. That's crazy talk. That's not the sort of thing we want to see, to be honest.
You coming out of minicamp in Baltimore, Woodhead has been heavily utilised as a receiver.
He does that all the time, doesn't it? It doesn't matter where he goes. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, I'm under no illusions how good this guy is in PPR leagues. I mean, there's no doubt that's why people go to their zero RB strategies and pick up a Danny Woodhead later.
I'll just give you a little stat that might back what you just said.
Yeah, go for it.
Ravens threw 23.3% of their passes to the RB position in 2016.
Wow, okay.
So that's almost a quarter of their passes thrown to the running back.
Yeah, and it's
Woodhead is one of the best at it.
He's brilliant at it because he's got... I mean, obviously he doesn't drop many, he doesn't fumble many. He's got a great pair... it's one thing to catch, but the guy's got brilliant soft hands, and his ability to sort of take the catch and turn is so fluid. He always seems to make yards after contact. So, I mean, again, he's one of these guys who's incredibly good
if he stays fit again.
Obviously, injuries, there's a risk-reward kind of player here. But I think in PPR, particularly in PPR, he's very, very strong. Yeah. And I think if you were kind of, in a situation in a draft where, whether it's redraft or whatever it might be you're doing, and you're looking at a running back that's going to complement what you've got, but you don't have top end ones. He's very, very good.
I mean, certainly leagues have PPR now. I mean, it's the ESPN standard now from what he used to.
Which we kind of like the format. I'm quite a fan of the half a point PPR. Really, I like, but haven't seen too many leagues personally, money leagues that I've been involved in that have that. And maybe that's just because in Britain, maybe we're just a little bit behind in regards to that. I know why they've done it in other leagues, because there's been the devaluation domination of the running back position up until last year. So that's why it kind of moved over to a half point to make up for some of that.
He'll definitely be value in those sorts of leagues.
Very much so, yeah.
Okay, the next bit of news is from the Jets, their quarterback situation. McCown, not a sure thing to start a quarterback. Hackenberg, the gap between him and Hackenberg is really close.
Well, I don't think it matters who starts. We've already talked about the Jets last week. I mean, we are disappointed with... I mean, we think they're angling for a top pick. That's what it looks like to me. And I think it's really sad for their fan base. I think it's sad for the team. And I think it's actually pretty sad if you're a quarterback there. Because
they're certainly rebuilding, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see... If I'm being honest, I'd like to see Hackenberg get a chance. But I don't want to see him be thrown in the deep end, the lion's den from day one in a bad team. I mean, how many quarterbacks' careers have been destroyed by that? I'd rather the Jets... Look, the guy looks interesting. Give him the year to sit behind.
So you think it's likely? Then what you're saying is you think McCown will start?
Yeah, I do.
And then when they're going to be taken anyway. And when they're like 2-6 or whatever,
then they'll give the guy a chance.
I
don't mind that too much because at least he's had half a season to sit.
And the pressure's off because you're losing anyway.
It doesn't matter then. He can just, guns away kind of thing. You can just go for it. And the fans will like him even if he does a few good things, it will be fine, it will help him, but you don't want to throw him in the deep end straight away with that kind of team, because I think we're very worried about what kind of pressure those quarterbacks are going to face, given that there's not a lot to fear out there defensively. You think you could throw caution to win and go after the quarterback a lot, you can take some real risks and blitzes.
I mean, it's going to be a long old season for the Jets.
Very tough, I think. I mean, maybe they'll surprise us. Strange things have happened in the NFL, but it just looks awful so far. We'll have to wait and see how it pans out for them, but I do not like the look of it at all.
Okay, let's move on. We don't want to talk about the Jets. We're talking about fantasy football. They don't.
No compute there. Avoid most of the players as best you can in fantasy drafts, irrespective, unless the value's too good to turn away. That's the advice we would give. Jai looking much smoother as a receiver. I'm under no illusions. I mean, that's going to add even more. I mean, they could throw the whole work. Let me tell you something, right? So I watched the tape last year, and I've heard lots of fantasy enthusiasts, very good people who I trust, who have said avoid Jai this year. And I don't like to give advice out counterintuitive unless I can back it up. And what I saw was, it's one thing for a player to have a 200-yard game, right? It's one thing to do that. That happens. Sometimes that happens for a number of reasons. We've seen that. But how often do you see a player do it more than once in the same season? In fact, do it 3 times. In fact, do that in their career 3, 4, 5 times. Only someone who's really got elite ability is able to do it. So Jai is showing you, in that small sample size of a season, that he has the capability to do something pretty exceptional. Now, granted, some of the opponents Miami had, you wouldn't say were elite calibre. But at the same token, you have to play who's in front of you. And what I like about Jai is he can score from anywhere on the field. And I think, given a full workload, and they were underrating his receiving skills. That's why I'm so glad you brought this up.
That's what I mean. I mean, if they're
underrating him.
If they're saying his skills have improved, that says they're going to use him.
If he
adds on to your...
If he can just add 15 or 20 more catches, and you just think about that for yards, and even if 1 or 2 of those are converted for touchdowns, everything we've said about him being a comfortable 200-point player in that first large round, something you could get him in smaller leagues in the second round. It's a lovely comeback player in the second round, because there are other running backs you'd be slightly more worried about in the second round of any draft. You'd be thinking, I don't know. If you like your running backs, I think Jai is one I'm really comfortable to give as my number 2 pick of this season. That's how high I rate him. I've got him down on my list, and only a few people know this.
What do you mean if you say number 2 pick?
What I'm saying is he's my number 2 out of... It's very easy to pick the top guys.
Are you talking about number 2 overall?
No, I'm talking about number 2 on my list of the players that I really like for this season to really target, because it's easy to talk about David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott.
I mean,
everybody's going to talk about those, Odell Beckham Jr. We're all going to talk about... Anybody can...
And nobody needs to be told about
We don't need to talk about those. What we're going to give you this year particularly... We did that last year because we picked David Johnson out when no one else was really there. Everybody else was talking about the obvious ones. We're doing it again this year because we've got ideas that we think are correct, going to prove to be really good value. I mean, look at Jai. He's going outside the first round in any league under 16. Any league under 16, he's going in. If you've got a 12-man league, he's going under that. 14, he's under that. You go 16, yes, he's just inside. Wow, I mean, that's real value for a player that I believe will get 200 points. There's so few of those in the second round that you can comfortably say will do it. And I feel really confident giving that advice out. And I think we're going to see more and more as it gets closer. The only thing that hampers him, the risk of injury. We know the knee situation, but he didn't show any of it last year. He played tough. He knows he's on borrowed time. They all know he's on borrowed time. But most running backs get 3 or 4 years in the NFL. If J.J. can get 3 or 4 years, he may set some marker down in Miami that separates him as one of the best they've had. So I'm very comfortable giving him out as a really good piece of advice.
He could really get a monster load, couldn't he, this year?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm very happy to do that. And funny enough, I think we've had a little bit of validation from people who we know very closely have kind of hinted at, God, I really wish you hadn't have given that.
Yeah, it's kind of the person they were targeting.
So that's good to see, because that helps. It helps us know that we're kind of on the right lines.
Okay, we can't do a podcast without talking about the Cleveland Browns.
And good, because we love them.
Obviously, their number one pick, Myles Garrett, is in a walking boot with a lateral foot sprain.
Yes.
Is this going to be a He's had sort of foot injuries all through his career as well, hasn't he?
Yes, he has.
So that's a bit worrying, isn't it, really? He should be back for camp at the moment.
Yeah, the concerns are that, looking at the medical advice, again, I can only go on what people tell me, and I go with the best source I've got, is that, yes, he'll be back for camp. Yes, he should be able to take contact during, pre-season. But the reoccurrence, we talked about this last season with great accuracy. Remember what the doctor said to us, is reoccurrences on these kind of injuries are very high. If a player is slightly rushed back, there's a 50% chance.
Well, look at Sammy Watkins.
So,
sort of ongoing foot issues.
And that's what I'm going to err there. That's one of those where you put the little red flag around the player, and you honestly say to yourself, yes, if the value's there, of course it's a good pick, but you just have to be incredibly careful.
I mean, the Browns need him as well. They need a game changer on defence.
They definitely do, yeah. And I would be very worried. I mean, obviously there are leagues out there where people look at these kind of players, and maybe his value drops, as ADP value drops in certain IDP kind of leagues. That could be great for you, but there is a risk, big risk, yeah.
Okay. This is not really fantasy football related, but it involves Gronk.
Yeah.
He's just been to the casino and Chalk took a bar bill of $102,000.
Well, he's had a fantastic off-season.
Is that the sort of night out that you like to spend?
More like £10 and 2 pence. But no, in all fairness to him, I mean, he's had a brilliant off-season. I mean, the one thing I love about Gronk, right, I mean, as much as we know he's probably one of the ultimate boom or bust players, again, I suppose we'll talk about him in future videos, but he knows how to have a good time, and he knows how to have fun, and it's good fun. He never takes anything too serious. I saw him doing a White House thing where he just appeared at the door, and I don't know if you saw him at the White House.
No, I didn't.
Where he popped his head out and he was calling for the president. I mean, this guy is hilarious. I mean, he really is a funny bloke who enjoys life in the right way.
You could, haven't you? Really?
And he never takes anything too seriously. And also, as well, one thing people probably don't know, a lot of the American football players are really into this. He's one of the best at this. His charity work that he does, and the organisations that he's set up, and the things he genuinely believes in, he put a lot of money and his own money into them, and he really goes for them. And a lot of credit to him for that. I mean, I know he jokes around and he monkers about a bit, but when he's on the field, there's no messing about with him, is there? He's all business there. But he knows how to have fun, and that's important in this game, and that's why it's so good they've gone back and actually said, let's have a bit of fun, because the league needs that. Yeah, I'm glad for people like him. He always makes me laugh, and I do like the fact he's never afraid to spend money on his friends. Okay, it's extraordinary amounts of money, but then this is the NFL, and it is a different kind of life they lead, to be honest with you. But at least he's having fun in the off season. But he's also, he's going to come back correct weight, ready to go, fully trained up. I mean, it's not like he's not training, is it?
No. But, if he comes back looking like Eddie Lacy, he's
if he's on a PX90 diet, then there's a problem. Yeah, and he won't be until we'll be fully fit.
Well, keeping on the fun theme, there's some news. Packer fan Ryan Holton Murphy just got married.
Yeah,
and he actually took his wife's name.
Right.
Because her name is Marie Packer.
Okay.
So he's actually took his wife's name. So instead of the other way around, being a big Green Bay fan.
Well, they're massive fans, aren't they? I mean,
we called it like a no-brainer for...
The Cheeseheads Wisconsin fans are probably the best fans in the NFL, I think. I mean, they're just so loyal. I mean, they buy tickets for life. It's impossible to get a seat. You have to go on a 30-year waiting list. I mean, it's some fan
looks a great place to watch football.
Well, I would love to go and see
a cold place to watch.
Yeah, I'd love to go and see a game there, just purely as a neutral to observe how they operate, and they're so good a fan base. I've seen a number of documentaries on the fans and how obsessed they are there. I mean, it's obsessed everywhere in America, but that just looks a great town. I mean, I'd love to go there. My God, it'd be good, wouldn't it? Just for once to see that. But yeah, I don't blame him. That's quite fun, isn't it? It's nice. It's a nice thing to do.
Okay, we're going to do a little news section here. I don't know how this will work, and you can let us know, in the comments and the feedback.
And we do need also, as well, Al, we must point this out, is we need your support. We're still a very, very big secret on the internet. I mean, my word, we need people to get behind the Thefanpubcast. We need them to talk about it. We do need you to share it. And remember, there is incentives.
Subscribe to the channel. Like
subscribe to the channel. There is incentives, because when we go over 100 subscribers on YouTube, and don't be afraid, to share the iTunes links as well. We will be doing something pretty special for you, those who have subscribed to us. So remember that. I haven't forgotten it from last year, and I'm still up for doing it this year. And just please help us grow it.
Even if it's to put Sean out of pocket, it's got to be worth it.
It's got to be worth it, isn't it? Absolutely. But it won't be 102,000 now, I've got to tell you.
No, not
quite, no.
So it's not out in Las Vegas.
Not a shame, no.
Okay. Okay, we're going to do a stat section. Let's see. Yeah. We'll see how this works. Over the last 2 seasons combined, 6 wide receivers have seen at least 20% of their team's red zone targets. Yeah. Most of these are going to be about red zone targets. So, because it's quite important when you're deciding on a player. And obviously, touchdowns are game changers. So,
yeah.
Which 6 players do you think could be in that wide receiver core?
This is over the last.
Yeah. So they've had 20% of their team's red zone targets.
Yeah.
And they've converted at least 30% of them into touchdowns.
Well, I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with the top receivers. Really, going to start with Odell Beckham Jr. has got to be one of them.
He's not one of them.
Right, I'm surprised about that. What about then Antonio Brown?
He's one.
He's a big red zone target.
They are all.
What about Michael Thomas? Must be pretty.
No.
So he wasn't a.
Okay, last 2 years.
Last 2 years, right?
So probably maybe he would be.
Some of the others I would ignore just simply because of who they are. Would Rashid Matthews sneak into that list?
No, he's not on there.
Okay, I'm interested in him more than now. Go for it.
Okay, so we've got Doug Baldwin.
Yeah, I suppose that makes perfect sense being in Seattle.
Eric Decker.
Yeah.
He was actually higher than Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall just misses out on the list by 0.7%. I think. Yeah. Larry Fitzgerald, AJ Green, and Alan Robinson.
It's interesting about Green because of the injuries that he's had. So it just shows you how good he has been when he's been on. When he had his injury last year, how good he's been.
And with Alan Robinson.
Yeah. And Alan Robinson, that will surprise people. But I actually thinking about it, I did read a stat where so few. I think he was he had so few converted in the red zone, wasn't it? Between him and Baldwin.
I mean, you've got exactly.
They had a great number in there. That's very true.
I mean, there's big names missing out: Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, and that brings us nicely into the next stat, which is 86 players had more red zone targets than Julio Jones last year.
Right.
I mean, this is a.
Well, Julio Jones is.
This is a stud wide receiver.
Yeah, but Julio Jones is in that mould. That's why I would never put a player like T.Y. Hilton in it, because we know he doesn't get many touchdowns. Whereas Julio Jones is also really, in the grand scheme of things, yes, he can have some decent touchdown numbers, but really, he's never massively high. He's always consistent. It's never massively high. So I wasn't expecting him to kind of make the list actually.
57 wide receivers, 20 tight ends. And 9 running backs basically had more targets than him.
Well, I've come to the conclusion based on a few observations that people have made over the last couple of years. My mythology of choosing wide receivers has definitely changed, and it's very simple. I spoke about it last year, but it's worth mentioning again this year. People are right. If you're going to go down the route of zero RB, which is very, very, it's a strategy people like to employ, or any route where you think about wide receivers. Particularly in redraft, it's normally the key factor is touchdowns. So therefore, what you want is height, don't you? That's what you want. You want height,
you've got height,
catch zone radius, and touchdown numbers, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for players that can give you that, so that you have an edge when it comes to picking those.
So Julio only had 9 red zone targets last year, from 21 the year before.
It's disappointing.
But the coach has come out and said they're going to target him more this year. I think there is hope there.
Well, I think they've got to. I mean, his Super Bowl performance showed why he's an elite wide receiver. All the years of great work, but the Super Bowl performance. If you were looking for blame, he ain't it. He was the best player you had out on that field.
To be honest, none of them played badly. They just didn't run the ball enough to close out the game.
None of the players played badly.
Stupidity.
They were coached poorly.
Well, they were coached well in the start, but they didn't see out the game.
It's interesting because I thought they got out of the gate, they did everything that you need to do, and that's great. But where was the change of mindset from the coaching when you're 25
They ran it 3 times when they were.
You should be using the clock up fully. I mean, it would have taken away at least one New England drive if you'd have used the clock properly.
That's a game won.
And that's it. There wasn't enough time, but you allowed them every chance. They're so disappointing. And it'll be interesting to talk about them nearer the season a bit more about do we think it's going to impact them. So we're interested to talk about that.
Also, we're talking about red zone targets. DeAndre Hopkins is another player that only had 9 red zone targets in the whole of the year.
Well, we know the reasons.
Thanks to us.
Yeah, we know the reasons why.
Fedorowicz had 12.
Yeah.
Fuller had 9, the same. And Braxton Miller had 9.
Unbelievable.
And even Griffin, the second tight end, had 6. That just shows you how...
It's terrible. It's terrible for a wide receiver of his quality. He should have been targeted more. It's such a shame because what could he do? I mean, he did everything he could do, but he was let down by coaching staff and quarterback. So it'd be interesting how he does this year. It'd be very interesting. Have you got high hopes for him?
Who for?
Hopkins.
Yes. Higher hopes.
Yeah.
He's proved he can do it. He's elite. I mean, it wasn't his fault. I mean, Osweiler was just terrible, or whatever it was between them. The chemistry was as bad as
the mechanics. There definitely was a chemistry issue there, and that does happen.
You can't catch the ball when it's on the floor.
There are some players
or thrown behind you.
There are some players that do this. You know, I found this when I was quarterbacking or coaching actually. You find some players don't understand the timing that you need or how to adapt to what's around you. Quarterbacks, though, a good quarterback will actually be able to make... This is what separates Rodgers, Brady and any of them actually, Luck. They can adjust the route or their passing to what you do, and that separates them from the so-called quarterbacks who have to drop back, have to be measured, look at the time, get everything down right. These guys don't. They can just throw the ball. They know where you're going to be. They can make a difference. They can change the stance. They can drop 3.5 steps back and make it happen. So,
8 balls.
Well, I mean, I like him. I mean, maybe I'm the only one that does. I see great fantasy value from him again.
It's a big year for him, though, isn't it?
It's a big year. It's a very important year for him because the Jags have turning a corner where I don't think they've got the back. I think we talked about how well Cleveland have done. I think Jags are also improving, and I think they're making some good stuff at the back office. And I think if you're being honest, this is a year for Bortles to decide whether you're going to be a franchise.
I think it's make or break, or just be a backup the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. He's either going to become a franchise quarterback or he becomes a journeyman, and this year will definitely prove that. Because I think they'll cut him in.
At the moment, he's just king of garbage time. When the game's over, he's brilliant. Is it a mentality thing? Is it when the pressure's on, he just isn't good?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are a number of factors at play. I mean, I think the guy's got all the talent in the world. I mean, there's nothing about his tape that I go, well, I don't like it. I mean, it does throw some bad passes. Well, every quarterback will do that. But I think he's got every ability to throw deep, short, medium. He's got all the skills.
What's his decision making like? So
that's the issue comes on.
Did he try and force it too much?
Too many times he backs his ability. This happens with young quarterbacks a lot.
So you're trying to bail him out.
Yeah, well, you're trying to. It's like with that old phrase about your body's trying to cash checks that your mind can't make. It's not possible. The guy is throwing balls in between 2 defenders and hoping that his man's going to get it, and often or not it breaks down or is deflected or taken away. I mean, that's just poor decision. And as you say, when the pressure's off, it's like he relaxes, and when he relaxes, he's so much better, which is a real shame. You see this in so many games. If you look at the fantasy numbers, I'm sure the enthusiasts out there will know this. First half of most games, you're thinking, blimey, he's only on 4.2. Second half, he's somehow got to 15 or 17 fantasy points. It's mostly garbage time.
Yeah, I guess so. Or you have to throw more because you're behind.
Because you're behind, and he's got to gamble up, and we've seen some pretty bad games. But you are right. This is make or break year for him, and we'll see after this year. I've still got hopes that I think he can make it. I
look forward to him being in your team.
Oh, I hope not. I've got hopes of him making it. I didn't say that I want him necessarily, but he does make an interesting second quarterback or a late round flying.
He still finishes a top 10 QB in fantasy.
He can't knock that. Fantasy wise, that's
fantasy reasons.
As much as we hate it, but it doesn't reflect real life sometimes.
Okay, and our next stats concern Spencer Ware.
Yeah,
this is quite an interesting one actually. 73.3% of Ware's red zone opportunities came inside the 10-yard line.
Yeah,
which he was second highest among RBs among running backs. But his red zone touchdown rate is 12.9, which only ranked 28. Well, that shows he got a lot of opportunity.
The opportunity,
and he didn't get it done.
It backs up what I've told you.
Yeah.
So what it will back up is exactly what we said last week, which is simply this: is when you break it down, the guy started the first half last year off pretty strong. He got banged up, and then he fell off the page. Really, he just fell off the cliff. You just knew it wasn't happening.
But it wasn't through lack of opportunity.
No, and when you go into the detail, you will see that what I believe will happen is he will start off the season as the number one, and I believe Rashim Hunt, within a few games, takes over. And that, I believe, will be spelled out because he can't convert where I believe Rashim Hunt, given those opportunities, may well do.
And those stats actually back that up, don't they?
I think they do. Yeah,
I mean,
I'm glad you brought it up.
You getting the second amount of chances and then finishing 28 and actually
isn't good
getting
enough.
it done.
It's not good enough. Yeah, it's not good enough. And Kansas won't suffer falls lightly, so I think you'll see. I mean, he starts the year off and he actually starts converting far more of them, and then that keeps his job.
He could be the next, he could be the next Melvin Gordon, couldn't he?
Anything can happen. He's got some
no
skills.
Touchdowns to.
Yeah, he's got the skills, and it's just whether he starts the season off strong enough. If
but
he
you
doesn't,
think Kareem Hunt is?
I think Hunt is really poised to take this role.
I do as well, actually.
And I think he's really good value. You kind of the value's been rising so much. I mean, we're going to be talking about ADPs a lot this year. But up until kind of recently, it was all right, but it's started to climb up quite considerably, and I'm a little bit now. You're taking away a more positive shot than a maybe, and that's a worry in big redraft leagues. It's all right in smaller leagues; you can take a couple of punts. But I do back Rashim Hunt over Spencer Ware this year for a number of reasons. Yes,
Kareem Hunt.
Sorry, yes.
Okay. I've also printed off a red zone target by position. So if you're in an hour in about taking a player from a certain position, maybe working out how the offense is actually splitting those red zone targets.
That's very good. Yeah.
So what I've done, I've seen a chart, and I've just retweeted this on Twitter. It's really good actually. But it shows you the team by position, who the top ones and who the worst ones are.
Yeah.
So started at running backs. The team that throws to the running back most in the red zone, Baltimore. So again,
that backs up.
33%, nearly third, 32.4% made. And then Atlanta, well, that backs it up with how well they did.
And you've got Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, who both operate very well out of that.
That shows you why Coleman did so well last year, didn't it?
He was very good at converting his opportunities.
I don't know what Baltimore would do with theirs, but they threw to Asiata, McKinnon, and even Carl.
Putting it this way, Flacco gave them every chance to do well. Whether they did well or not is another matter, but he gave them every chance.
Woodhead again, that backs up that. New Orleans were third.
Yeah, and again that makes sense because they have a wide open split offense. Yeah. Breeze doesn't need a legit number one; he just spreads the ball,
and then it gives opportunity for the space for the running back. Really.
Yeah.
Detroit, obviously with Riddick, that would make sense.
I think we need to spend a moment on Detroit, if that's okay, because I mean what you brought up is a really good stat. Because I mean everybody was complaining a few years ago about obviously when Calvin Johnson was there that Matthew Stafford benefited from Calvin Johnson, but I think Matthew Stafford has proved that he is actually a legitimately very good quarterback who hasn't had many great pieces around him, and he does what he can by getting the ball out quickly into the hands of the best player.
He shows that he can get it done in more ways than one. Even after losing his top.
And I think you have to give him a bit more credit than currently he's receiving, and he is a decent quarterback, and he is going late in drafts, and that makes him very good value.
So a quarter of the time they were throwing presumably to Riddick. He had some really big weeks actually.
He did, yeah. And we both liked him. There was a certain point before he got injured, ironically enough. We were both trying to get him off one player, weren't we?
Well, I had him.
You managed to get hold of him. A bit unlucky the injury came because he was looking really good.
He certainly was, and he was he goes down low enough, and he probably will this year as well.
Another great player for one of those. If you're looking for a running back or in a league where
you can throw him in. I mean,
if you've got PPR points, a half point PPR, or you've got very few running backs because you've got wide receiver heavy, he's a great target player. Great one to have on your team.
San Diego were fifth. They're also 25%. So 1 in 4 chance. So Gordon again.
I think that's maybe a little bit skewed, that one, because they had so many injuries. They had to kind of find a way to get the ball out, and all right, the beneficiaries were the running back. Well, the running backs became the running back because Melvin Gordon had to carry the load for a long period of time last year. Do you think all the stars aligned correctly for Melvin Gordon last year, rather than? Is there a little bit of a worry? Are you a little?
I think losing Woodhead meant that he was going to get third down work as well. Yeah. So his workload.
So his stars all aligned.
And Woodhead hasn't come back, and they haven't really signed anybody to take that work off him.
So Melvin Gordon's right.
Another big workload. He's a free.
He's on for a big workload again.
Yeah, I think.
And he proved he can. He's got a nose for the end zone. It was a blip year one.
You look at the other ones.
Yeah.
The other people in the backfield.
There's nothing to fear there.
It's nothing to worry about, is it? So he's going to be a 3-down back. The ones that threw to the running backs at least, Dallas Cowboys, only 4%.
Well, they didn't need to. I mean, I think the thing is that Dallas Cowboys have got this offensive line where why would you throw to... Because normally one of the problems you suffer when you have a bad line... I mean, this is probably spells something out. I mean, look at the teams we're talking about. Look at some of those teams there. You've got New Orleans Saints, who you'd hardly say has got a great offensive line. San Diego, you wouldn't say he's got one of the greatest offensive lines. But what you're really dealing with is it's kind of situation where, when you've got a line like Dallas's, the running back, all he's got to do is carry the ball. Just carry the ball. You don't need to do anything too clever or, mismatch them or try and do some wishbone.
Well, you've got a bit of time for people to get over.
You've got time for people to get over. Your line blocks really well. They create holes that you just dream of sometimes. So I think that's okay. I mean, and also what it shows you is there's plenty of room for growth for Dallas. I mean, the sky's the limit.
4%. That is really.
The sky's the limit, isn't it?
So I mean, I guess they didn't. Zeke's not. He did catch some balls, but he didn't really do it.
I think again, you didn't want him lined up that way. You know what he can do. He reminds me an awful lot of. I mean, I'm going to give him this comparison. It's probably unfair to give it, but he reminds me a lot of Emmitt Smith.
Well, I think you'd be happy with that comparison.
I think that's a fair comparison because they both. Emmitt Smith wasn't regarded as someone who had, elite hands. He grew into that. If you remember Emmitt Smith, over time he became much better in the receiving game. I think Ezekiel Elliott and Dallas, that's what they'll do. So I think that's a really good comparison for them.
Panthers, obviously having Stewart.
Yeah.
Jonathan Stewart's not really receiving back.
Doesn't it just illustrate what we've been kind of hinting and alluding at here about them is that
their worry when you're talking about McCaffrey.
The ethos of the team. I mean, I know that these are elite players and of course they can make changes. I'm not saying they can't, but what I'm trying to illustrate is when it's been ground into the entire game plan that you're running between the tackles, to suddenly make a big change and your playbook, you're not this won't be a few plays. This is going to be like 50 plays they're going to have to develop for McCaffrey. It's going to be a big series of plays for him.
Yeah, it's a massive change.
Nothing wrong with that, but this is a big thing about timing between the quarterback, the running back, and there are some really positive things because I do like McCaffrey. I'm actually very excited to see him play. I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm just tempering because he's going so high. I don't like the ADP value for McCaffrey. Considerably worries me for return of what you're going to get.
It worries me as well. Actually.
So I'm kind of avoiding. I'm swerving. Now other people are going to go for it, and I understand that. I get it. But me, you're looking for a big return from this, and maybe it's not going to be there because people are all going, could easily get 80 catches. Are you being honest? Hang on a minute.
We could, but
be honest.
For me, it's a watching brief. I want to see how he does.
Absolutely.
He's a rookie. You don't know. They've got to change the whole system.
Look,
it's a big risk.
If I'm the defense, this is how I look at every team. You look at them and you think, what would you do? And in Panthers' case, if I'm the defensive coordinator, I told you this before, the first thing I do is when you've got a McCaffrey kind of player who is not likely to go through the tackle.
But he's not a runner through the tackle.
I have a spy. So one of my players behind, I have him as a spy. And he just follows, like if he's lined up left, you stay left. If he starts to move, you follow him. And the point of this is, what you're trying to do is, even if the guy gets out in the flat, you're limiting the damage. And what that also does is, what they want from McCaffrey is for him first down kind of thing to get 6, 7, 8 yards. If he does that, it makes it so much easier on second and third down to either run up the middle, maybe make a quarterback option play. That's what you're looking at. But if you limit them to say 3 or 4 or 5 yards, the second down is just as equally as important. It's no longer as simple about just throwing the ball out. Dink and dunk is not a method that I see the Panthers being able to employ easily. Not with that team.
His ADP's 33, so you're taking
very high.
It's too risky for me.
I mean, look at that. Even in the smallest of leagues, that's just in the edge of round 4, the smallest of leagues. But in reality, it's round 3.
Even the 12-team league, round 3.
Round 3, it's
33.
That's big risk.
So that shows you how much that actually backs
big
it up.
Change.
And the 11.4%, that would have been thrown to Mike Talbot.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he's not there anymore.
No, correct.
You won't see that guy waddling in the end zone anymore. Well, not for them anyway.
No, definitely not. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Number 3 is quite interesting.
Yeah, go for it.
Pittsburgh. With Lev Bell.
Yeah, it's surprising. Now that's the most surprising one because if you look at them and you see how they use Lev Bell, you do see him get used a lot. He does catch a lot of balls.
Obviously not in the red zone.
But not in the red zone, you're right. Yeah, it's interesting that. I wonder if that's because they're protecting Lev Bell because when you're inside that 10,
it's a bit tight.
There's more contact chances. I wonder if they're sort of thinking their mythology is it's one thing for him to run with the blockers there, but it's another thing for him to be actually out in the flat and taking a direct hit. So I'm probably what the decision making is. They'll limit those kind of contacts.
I mean, when you've got someone like Antonio Brown as well,
yeah, you don't need with an offense. We've talked about Martavis Bryant, but I don't think Martavis Bryant inside the 10 he's a big target. But I kind of think they can spread open the offense, which makes it better to run through, doesn't it?
We've got the Colts. They're the next lowest. Gore's not really receiving back, is he?
Well, there's lots of issues. They haven't really had a third down back, have they? They haven't had something.
Josh Ferguson did it a bit.
He wasn't. He unfortunately didn't pan out.
Gore's not really receiving.
Marlon Mack would have a chance to do some third down work this year, and I think that's where his relevance comes in. I think we're going to see plenty of Gore. We've had a lot of supporters for Gore. Quite interestingly, off film last time, off the podcast, a lot of people said, yeah, we agree with Gore. He proved how valuable he was, and people were talking about him in their championship
Again, he's
teams.
going too low, isn't he?
Very low again.
I mean, they said Turbin's going to be get a bigger part in the offence, but
not with the way Gore plays.
He'll steal some TD.
Gore had just a fraction under 1,000 yards at 33,
and he's a great blocker. Plenty of touchdown.
When you're talking about Andrew Luck, right? Here's a very interesting thing, right? So think of this: Andrew Luck got 41 sacks. They didn't come at the expense of Mr. Frank Gore when he was blocking. No. I can tell you that.
He was probably the best part of the O-line they had.
He was very strong. Just think if they didn't
Frank
have
Gore's
him...
going 74.
Just think if they didn't have Frank Gore... Now, I want people to seriously do this. It's worth a look. Look at the plays where Andrew Luck got sacked last year and look at Frank Gore. He was never in a situation to block for Andrew Luck. And if an attack came down his side... Boy, is he good at picking up the blitzer,
and that's why he survives.
Right, that's why he's so good still. And no matter what you think, I like obviously fantasy. We love our fantasy, but blocking is one of the key essentials to keeping. If you haven't got a great line, your running back absolutely has to plug the gap. His priority is to protect your red shirt. It's got to be protect, and Gore does that so well for Luck. I mean, if I was Andrew Luck. Marlon Mack at this moment in time, yeah, like the talent, just not yet. Thanks very much.
So until the
just wait a bit longer, please. Yeah, I don't want to get hit. So no, I think we'll see a lot more Gore again, and he's really underrated at 74. That's too low.
The next lowest and the fifth lowest is the Giants. That's not really a surprise.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think about this backs up pretty much everything we've talked about this year. We like them as a kind of a pick to reach the fight. We sort of saying people it's a dark horse team. You're very keen on them this year. We've looked at the running backs. I'm very cautious with Paul Perkins. I'm not a huge fan. I haven't seen any flash from him. I certainly don't like him as when we talk about picking up the blitzer. No thanks.
Yeah, I do like the Giants. They're 28-1. They're my other. I'm backing two outsiders.
It's a great bet.
The Titans at 50.
As you say, for a small bet at 28, I mean that's a great little bet, isn't it? It's a nice bet.
I think Giants, their defence, they brought in a lot of good pieces last year, but they took a time to gel, and at the end they were really.
And the Giants have proved, and we say it every year. We've been saying it for a little while. Your Giants are always one of these teams that slip under the radar and find a way into the playoffs and then go deep.
Well, look at their receivers, Marshall.
It's a fabulous team. But
I've got Ingram.
I'm not surprised with this stat at all
Shepherd.
that the Giants wide receivers have done very little in the red zone, and I expect that trend to continue. Running backs, yeah.
We'll move on to wide receivers. Which team do you think targets the wide receivers the most?
In the red zone,
they're one of the worst teams because basically it's the New York Jets.
Well,
they had Marshall and Decker.
All bets are off for this year.
Yeah, so they won't be there this
year. They may have to do that this year. They may be targeting their wide receiver / wide receivers a lot, but I don't see it for this season. To be honest with you, they had two very good players, like two veterans last year that you would. There was high hopes for Jets last year. There was you were hoping the holdout probably hurt them with Fitzpatrick. With the holdout didn't help, and then by the time he came into camp, it just shows you these were veterans. This is a veteran journeyman, and how that affected timing and everything else was all off, and their whole season quickly went down. So no, it doesn't hugely.
And almost their season gone down before it starts.
I'm very worried about them. That's for sure.
Okay, the next highest is Denver. They throw to their wide receivers 70% of the time.
Yeah, and that makes sense because
they got two elite wide receivers, Emmanuel Sanders and.
There's been some issues in the running game. I mean,
some issues in the passing game as well.
And we've seen. Well, they've got two veteran wide receivers. I mean, you've got Demaryius Thomas and you've got Emmanuel Sanders. So both I like. Both are really good value. Both are excellent value actually this year. Their ADP's very good value.
It's just their quarterback.
It's just the quarterback play just ain't the best. But both of them are more than capable for 1,000 yards, and both of them can get 6 to 8 touchdowns. And to be honest, where they're going their ADP, that makes them pretty safe. It doesn't make them exciting, but it makes them very safe. And sometimes safe is better than your risks sometimes.
But it's safe going to win your league.
But that's the issue. You have to know when to take a risk. I mean, I've learnt the hard way in these large leagues, and I'll say it all the time. It's one thing to risk, but you don't do it too early.
No.
And that means, when I say don't do it too early, I'm taking calculated risks after the first 2 are locked in. And when I say calculated, that does not mean I'm taking Christian McCaffrey round 3. That's not calculated risk. That's ridiculous. That's going for the glass ceiling that may never exist. I might be standing on a glass floor. I'd rather go with a player like a Demaryius Thomas or somebody along those lines where I know what I'm going to get at that point in the draft. Once we go into sort of round 5, 6, 7, 8, I'll take some shots, but only then this year. Smaller leagues, you can take shots earlier because you've got that extra 2, maybe 3 rounds, and this is where you have to really weigh up what you're doing, because I'm a great believer, you know me, I would rather risk it all and go for it than to sit back and play safe. I can play safe and maybe make the playoffs every year, and that's okay. But when you look back after 7 or 8 years and somebody goes, well, he always makes the playoffs, but he always goes out round 1. I don't want that. I want to be a dangerous team.
I want that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, well, not this year.
I'd wait for that.
No, I think we're all right this year. We're looking good.
Oakland are the next team, 66% of the time. So they've got Crabtree and they've got Cooper.
Yeah.
And it was pretty even split, I guess, which sort of Crabtree really got into Cooper's big upside for last year.
Cooper didn't help himself last year. I mean, he flashes wide receiver 1 numbers, elite wide receiver 1 ability. He flashes it. You see games where he dominates.
And he's got a great quarterback.
He dominates in some games, and you actually get very excited when you watch him. But Crabtree is a veteran, a pro, a great undervalued wide receiver again this year, unbelievably. After even a couple of years of really good performances, he's still undervalued. And what you have to think is the key this year is Amari Cooper is still, for my money, going too high. I mean, I'm a great fan of his. Don't get me wrong, I picked him last year and I really like him. But you're asking, in the round he's going generally, 180 fantasy points is my metrics for it. I'm still asking a lot. You're asking for very high wide receiver 2 numbers, and that's just too much. I mean, Crabtree's a more logical pick because even if he drops off a bit,
he'll probably benefit for when Crabtree actually leaves the team, won't he?
He will benefit. I mean, he'll definitely. I mean, he had some drops last year at key moments when he would have had touchdowns. He had a couple callback, which would have been touchdowns. I mean, he did suffer from a bit of what I call just one of them years, but there's no doubt at some point very soon, it could be this year and it might be next year, but he is going to be a very, very good wide receiver.
Do you think he suffered from the Sean Connors curse?
I think he may do. There is a Madden's curse. I do believe there is a
Sean Connors
early curse. That's one they have to worry.
Because everyone you traded for last year seemed to go down.
I had a bad well, I mean, people talk about
everything you tried.
Yeah, but when you have a rub of the green, sometimes you just kind of know. But we should spend a minute.
It was an enjoyable season for me to watch what was going on in your team. To be honest.
It was, but it was a good year. I mean, look at what we did last year. You played in 5 money leagues, and I played in 4. And funny enough, we both won 1 money league last year, and that was together.
Well, we played together, yeah.
When we played together, so I mean, it showed volumes. Now, what was interesting, Al made every playoff, and full credit to him, he put some good teams together. And I only made the playoffs in 2 of my 4. But my other team that didn't go deep, I think we keep saying it, we liked it, didn't we? On paper, what a team!
Well, I knocked it out.
Yeah, I know. What a team!
And then got knocked out myself.
But that's okay, and that's fantasy. But what we're really saying here is this year we're looking at things. Every year you learn, and every year you adapt. And the nice thing is that what you want to do is there's no such thing as a fad in the NFL. You know, you get moments where if you get on the right trend, like last year, you would have guessed that the right thing to do was go heavy on running backs. So I mean, you know, that was completely bucking the trend.
I don't think anyone was predicting that.
You know, nobody would have done that. But we were right. You know, last year we were right in. I highlighted the player to pick round 1. We did some great, players to avoid. That was one of our best lists. And I'm looking forward to seeing another one of those lists this year, which we'll definitely be putting out. So that would be very good because if you look back at that list, it was very strong. So anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Very good to reminisce momentarily.
The last 2 on the list are Green Bay and the Giants. No surprises there with Beckham.
Yeah.
For this for wide receivers, Jordy Nelson and Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
With Rodgers, it's there.
Yeah.
No surprises there. The ones that tightened the least were San Diego, 38%.
Very surprising because.
I suppose they've got.
But then.
San Diego were high on running backs and tight ends. They're the second highest on top with Hunter Henry and Gates.
I'm guessing what probably happened is if you think about this sheer volume of injuries that San Diego had last year offensively, the defensive coordinators were probably putting. There were defensive coordinators were probably putting thinking, well, we can cover these other wide receivers, and they were.
Well, when you got Hunter Henry and Gates, it's not surprising they're the second highest on.
And both of them were
on tight end red zone.
Both of them did what they always do. You're a big fan of Antonio Gates, and he's a bit like he's the tight end that's like Gore at the running game.
He's never going to get you a lot of yards because he's about as fast as I am.
But he doesn't have to because he's a really good red zone target, and he always gives you an honest day's work and always comes away with 4 or 5 fantasy points.
And he's another one that sort of hinders Hunter Henry's sort of upside because
Hunter Henry will be elite
when Gates
goes.
But Gates never
seems to want to go. So until he goes, both are capped. But both are good, still good. Both relevant, aren't they? Both of them can get relevant wide receiver points.
One other team that appeared in the top 5 that sort of interested me, that surprised me actually, the New Orleans were only 40%, 44%, which is the 4th lowest targets for wide receivers. With Thomas and
it is interesting. I think this year is going to be fascinating because I'm really curious to see. Obviously, they let go of Cooks. I don't know if they let go as much.
I suppose he's not a big red zone target.
He wasn't really a red zone target.
Snead didn't really get that many targets.
Snead's undervalued in ADP list. I mean, Snead is definitely crept onto a list that I like.
But does this stat tell you that it might be a bit more limited than you think?
I don't know. I mean, maybe what it's telling you is there's more opportunity as they evaluate last year's work.
It certainly wasn't Fleener getting the opportunity.
No, as you evaluate last year's body of work and you look at what the team can do to improve it, maybe it's more exciting actually in New Orleans Saints' case. I'm kind of excited to see what they do. I mean, Thomas is massive. He looks a really good red zone threat. Willie Snead can do the underneath stuff, and I think he's very undervalued this year.
Yeah, I think he can be. Yeah.
He's definitely crept onto my list of players to watch, and I've got quite an interesting announcement to make about Willie Snead at some point, which I really like. I like him a lot this year.
You're getting married?
No. I'm not taking his name. No. Sean Snead.
Yeah,
it sounds like a cop show, doesn't it? Sean Snead. I like it. It's it's going to be interesting. He's definitely on my list of players I like for this year.
Yeah,
definitely.
He's probably very underrated at the moment.
Yeah, I like him.
Common sense says his ADP's got to rise.
It's got to.
Just because of opportunity.
But if you're drafting and the opportunities are there, these are the players you've got to look at. There's the kind of players.
Fleener's another one I could see improving as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a good pick for tight end.
It's a disappointing year for
tight end. Well, generally
on a high-powered offense.
Yeah, generally in tight end numbers. I mean, you think because Gronk got injured quite quickly, and you look overall. I mean, there were some players that stood out. Obviously, Kelch will be one that people will talk about tight ends, but 138 was the top points from Kelce. 138, and you think about the rest of the time.
I think Travis Kelce, he could go up as well, like you said. I think with the obviously red zone target, he's going to be up there in Kansas, isn't he?
You know, for Kelce, I mean, the thing is, you can see why people go in quite hard and early in drafts for him because you kind of, when you look at the ceiling, his is pretty high. I mean, he could easily become.
It's just anybody,
but it's risky. I mean, because the
Chiefs don't tend to be a high-powered throwing offense.
No, I mean, all the value in Kelce is round 4. I mean, if you go in round 4, that's my metrics is telling me it's 140 fantasy points. Well, how accurate was that last year? You know, people go 140. Well, you took him and you look for 140, you got 138. What did you gain? You didn't actually gain anything. It wasn't like you blew it away and you got an extra 20 fantasy points to make your team really good. The reason I'm mentioning these point numbers is once you go past round 6 and beyond in any draft size, you're looking for players that can give you at least 100 plus fantasy points. And that's not playing safe because you don't always want a player that definitely going to give me 100. Well, that's boring. You want players that can obviously exceed the 100 because everybody that can exceed it is a player that can be locked into your lineup.
That's valuable to your team.
It's hugely valuable. Once you get a player you don't know anything about him and it's a rookie that you don't even know if he's going to make the team, well, that's a punt, that's a gamble, that's a sleeper. If you're right, great. But if you're wrong,
if you're taking it late, then it's not going to hurt your team.
It doesn't hurt you, but it depends on the league size. I think it's worth mentioning this. In our 16-man leagues, and you can use this very carefully, rounds 1 to 2 are the lock rounds. In smaller leagues, 14 and 12, you've got 1 through to 3 rounds. Those are your lock players because it's a bit easy. You've got a little bit more room. But once you go outside of that to round 9, so in the large league, that's 7 more rounds. You're looking for 4 other players that lock with the original 2. If you get that right, you're a playoff team. If you get it wrong, you will struggle until you either pick someone up or do a great trade.
Okay, finally, just before we finish the podcast.
Hey, we're on time. Look at that.
We might do. We haven't finished.
Yeah.
Which team do you think targeted the tight end most in the red zone?
Oh, that's a great question.
38% of the time they targeted the tight end.
That's a very good... No, I don't know. I don't want to leave too big a pause in that, because I was just trying to compute through my head who it might be. But
Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
So Carl Rudolph.
Carl Rudolph, that's a very good
Wasn't
call.
he the number 3 tight end?
Yeah, he ended up, fantasy-wise, he was in the top 5.
Towards the end of the last few games.
He was very good at the end of last season. He had a very good rapport with Sam Bradford. And Sam Bradford as well, just to give a little bit of love to, because we haven't done that in the past much. For all the red flags he had last year, actually did a really good year's body of work. And to his credit, he had to pick the offence up on the fly. So had a season
most accurate quarterback in the league.
So
safest, probably.
Probably safest, but that's not bad. There's nothing wrong with being intelligent and playing it safe. Sometimes that can be very useful.
I mean, if you want to pick up a Diggs or someone in PPR, then...
What this actually tells you, right, there is one little stat in this that tells you something, okay? And this is the stat that's going to most excite my son, actually, of all of them. This is the player he likes the most of all the rookies. Dalvin Cook will have a fantastic year in Minnesota should they let the reins off and give him a go, because that stat highlights why he should have a good year. Bradford and him, if they connect, it should be a very nice year for him.
The thing is, he's not going to get goal line.
No.
Could be Latavius Murray, though.
No,
Murray's
right.
going to. So
it's a tempered split backfield. You've got to be aware, exactly like you said last week. Latavius Murray, they didn't. They paid the money. They're going to use him, and Dalvin Cook will get used. There will be a split of some kind. What that will be, it'll be very difficult to work out. But if you can get Dalvin Cook a bit later, if you can get him like round 5, round 6 in a large league or something along those lines, then you're okay. Then it's the value. Then it's not so bad. He could be a good complement piece. I'm not expecting him to be anything more, but in that offense, with the way Sam Bradford has played, that stat highlights it. He could do very nicely, Calvin Cook.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to an end for this week's pubcast. So, if you enjoyed the video or you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a like or a comment.
We should at least get that just for finishing on time. How about that?
Yeah, well, we just about made it, yeah, which is a miracle for us. So, we really appreciate any support you can give us, and it really helps us out a lot. So,
we do.
Thanks very much.